Hello, everyone. A very good evening. Welcome to today's webinar.
Hello, everybody. Is that okay?
Yep, all well. I'm going to start now.
Good. Hello, everybody. I hope you're well, and yeah, looking forward to this discussion on the future of CI, how AI and human insight are redefining competitive advantage. So, what we're really looking at here is particularly we're looking at some ways where you can utilize AI to support human insight and improve what you're doing in relation to human insight, make it more effective. So, and also a bit about why human insight is so important in the current environment. So, as it says here, why human intelligence is critical at a time where we're kind of getting overwhelmed by AI content. So, our sort of hypothesis as a company is that in the current environment where the the sort of amount of content is ever increasing and probably increasing exponentially, um, particularly driven by AI, and also the ability to pull together and analyze and present the information that is available in the public domain is improved by AI. The use of primary intelligence, of um, expert interviews, of different forms of um, human intelligence um, will continue to be important and indeed increase in importance in the coming period. Um, I wanted to just start off by highlighting a few findings that came from some recent research that we did. So we did um, a piece of research into our customer base. I think we did, a small sample, 6 or 8 interviews with people who regularly buy competitor and market intelligence, and looking at what their feedback on the market, on what they were looking for, on TBRC, the business research company itself. See, here are a few of the highlights of what they said in terms of um, uh, what they're looking for. So insight, not information. So big emphasis on actionable insights, shorter deliverables, more clearly aligned with decision making, validated findings, so contents that have been where they can trace back the insights to who said it or what it's based. Um, Deep competitor understanding, so that again definitely plays into the kind of primary part where you really understanding your competitors, your customers, etc., in a way that I think we would argue is really only possible through conducting some level of primary interviews, whether it be industry experts, whether it be market participants, forward-looking perspectives. So yeah, definite um, emphasis on looking forward rather than backwards. I think a lot of market intelligence kind of looks backwards because that's obviously where we have the hard data. But people are really looking for what's going to happen next. Obviously, that's what gives them the opportunity for an advantage. customization and clarity. So people are looking for materials which are customized to their needs, not off the shelf. And yeah, that really answer their questions. So we spoke to Pauline, who was, I think, market intelligence manager from one of the largest sports retailers. So speed and price, yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of in every industry. There's a people want more for less and faster, but it's still important to understand. Hang on, I'm just trying to move this thing at the bottom so I can see everything properly. Yeah, and multi-client studies are too high level. We hire subject matter experts for the level of detail we need. So that's Patrick from a plastic rubber company. So yeah, I think so that's kind of again the same thing that off the shelf doesn't necessarily work for people. I would argue that as or more important, frankly, than having subject matter expertise is primary research, or that you need both. So at TBRC we have subject matter experts, but even then, if you're looking at a niche, 90% of our work is on niche markets. We don't have many studies for the who want to look across healthcare or want to look at technology or, even I don't know, computer hardware or something. They want to look at a very specific part of the market because that's where most of the market is in the niches, in the specialities. So there's no way that any market intelligence company is going to have an expert who's been doing that all their lives. But what you can do as either as a provider or as a um, uh, um, as an in-house team is talk to people. So what we do is we often bring in a consultant who is within that niche to work across the project, but we also primarily focus on speaking to a lot of people who are in that industry, and that we think gives a level of insight that nobody is going to get. No consultant can offer from just having some industry knowledge and doing secondary. Um, so yeah, we sort of always feel that there's a sort of point after you've done maybe 10 interviews, 15 interviews in a particular niche where you really start to understand what's really happening and what makes it tick, and that's the critical thing that clients are looking for. Okay, so that was just a bit of a kind of high level background piece, but it is relevant to the subject of that we're talking about today. Right, and now I don't know how to move on to the next slide. Right, yes, sorry, it was just delaying rather there. So, how primary research and AI and human intelligence are redefining competitive advantage. So with AI, competitors are launching faster, adding new products, new services, iterating their marketing at a faster using AI. And so that's changing things. There's this kind of information parity. So the use of AI allows you to find information better, organize it, interpret it more effectively. It's like having a sort of team of researchers available to you, good researchers at that. So in terms of publicly available information, it's all, it's more open than ever to everybody. And stakeholders are demanding real-time conclusions, actionable insights, not reports. So that again came from our customer study, but I think is a kind of recognized truth. Um, so how does secondary research and primary research fit into this? And that within the sort of AI context. So secondary research supported and powered with AI is fast, it's cheap. I think it's becoming increasingly clear that, AI is going to be a commoditized service, and that really everyone's going to have access to good quality AI, certainly for the type of requirements that we have in this industry. So it's not a matter of whoever's got the best AI is going to win. It's for whoever uses that AI most effectively and integrates it with their existing skill set, which remains important. So fast, cheap, it's uniform, it's public. So critically, yeah, it doesn't look into databases of proprietary information that are behind paywalls, right? So it's very good on the publicly available information. It's good on information that governments have published. It's extremely good on things like understanding and describing market structures, etc., and how things work. But it doesn't have access to proprietary data sources, and they continue to have advantages. And I think one of the things that we're starting to see in the market is proprietary data sources launching their own AI tools that have access not only to the broader AI responses, but specifically allow access to their content integrated into that. And that's going to be I think, a big feature of the market intelligence market going forward. Surface level, yeah, to some extent. It's not digging into the people's motivations, etc. But in terms of its ability to analyze and to suggest ideas, it's obviously a huge step change from pure search. Um, how is primary being affected by AI, and that's the sort of the main topic for this discussion. So primary, a lot of these things, remain these points remain the same. So it's exclusive, contextual. It looks at motivation, looks at behavior. It's real time at the point when it happened. And it can also be confidential. It can be information A that's not in the public domain, B that potentially is information, is highly valuable information that other people don't have, and maybe your competitors don't want you to know. Um, so in summary, AI summarizes public information, primary research reveals non-public insights, AI describes what happened, humans explain why it happened, AI detects signals, and humans validate those signals. So yeah, AI uh, is very good at generating ideas, making suggestions. I think supported by and in conjunction with human generated ideas, but those ideas need to be validated, and unless they're ideas that are supported by data by the AI, by sort of pure clear sourcing that can be verified, that primary can be a key way to validate those ideas. Okay, I'll just take a momentary pause at that stage. Is there anything that any questions at the moment? Okay, fine. So I'll continue. Um, so some examples of how AI can buttress uh, so how primary research can work in conjunction with, validate, support, disprove AI findings. So hang on, struggling a bit with the getting everything out of the way. Um, a competitor's new product patent filed. So AI would, is good at picking up that kind of information, but when to people it reveals they don't launch for 12 months due to a regulatory delay. AI detects a distributor partnership announcement. Primary interviews reveal that the distributor is weak and losing share and is no threat. AI scrapes some new pricing changes. When you speak to people, you find out that it's a temporary change to clear inventory and not a long-term strategic move. So these are some of the ways that AI can be supported by AI findings can be supported by or disproved or nuanced by primary research. So core values of primary research: context and motive, local rules and enforcement, validation of signals and removing false positives, access to non-public behavioral data, re revealing hidden opportunities, and but most importantly here well, critical is the ability to find out information, often hard information that is not in the public arena. Types of primary research, so expert interviews, distributor and channel checks, mystery shopping. So these are some of the key ones that we would use as a market intelligence, a competitive intelligence company. Um, uh, some of the regulatory stakeholder interviews, etc. Some which are in slightly other fields, things like ethnography, um, uh, customer surveys, IDIs, and focus groups, which you know would is more sort of pure market research and focused on customers. But we certainly do in-depth customer research for B2B clients to understand customer motivations, etc. And that's a really um, critical value of primary research. Roles of AI. Um, so, how can AI help you and speed things up in the process of doing human research, primary research? So there's questionnaire and discussion guide support. AI is really good for um, creating um, templates for discussion guides and for questionnaires, as long as you make sure you're really thinking it through, changing it, developing it from there. Transcription is a fantastic tool, and it was coming in before AI, but has been further improved by AI. Summarization is extremely useful. Again, with some caveats, you need to, if you're looking at a very high level expert or market participant interview, you want to be really questioning and checking the summarization and not just taking it for granted that that's covered. Synthetic persona interviews are a really interesting area. I was at a conference recently where people were saying that they'd done a research project and they'd fulfilled a large part of their quota or their target. But there were a couple of um, target respondents that they just hadn't been able to get, and that they had created synthetic personas and utilized their responses with caveats. I think it's still very much a kind of open debate about the legitimacy of that. But it's certainly one of the kind of hot topics um, in this melding of AI and primary research. Text analysis, theme extraction from interviews. So I'll talk more about this kind of thing um, in a later slide. But yeah, there's that's an important opportunity as well. Matching respondents and profiling, so helping you to find the respondents in the first place, which I think is an area of real growth. Not something that we've actually done that much of yet, but I think that's a huge opportunity for AI to get more and more involved in recruitment, and there are companies moving forward with that. Um, Caveats: AI clearly needs prompt engineering and human oversight. So AI can't interview a frustrated distributor, uncover competitors' internal delays, observe real buying behavior, assess tone, confidence, hesitation, or intent. So I think one of the things that I think we probably all recognize with AI is that it tends to be a little bit uh, over optimistic, a little bit ideal world. Um, uh, it doesn't tend to highlight, um, uh, the drawbacks or the day-to-day frustrations, the real world problems that people encounter. It's more the kind of theoretical. It'll tend to be more kind of the theoretical possibilities and opportunities rather than the day-to-day um, realities of a business, and that's a particular thing that that really comes out in primary research. So just a little talk through of uh, um, how we would use AI in a primary research process. Um, Define critical intelligence questions and scope with the client. Most of this will come from us, from the client, but it's never does any harm to use AI to do blue, for ask for blue sky ideas and see whether it comes up with anything that you haven't thought of. Respondent sourcing and screening, avoiding professional takers. As I said, I think that is a growth opportunity, but it's something that I can't really talk too much because we haven't really got going on doing that yet. Multi-method framework fieldwork. So the transcription and summarization, potentially saves us maybe 25 to 30% of the time for an interview, and gives us the capacity to do more faster and cheaper. Um, Triangulation and analyst validation. So what we do, and this is a fairly new thing, but it's something that we're experimenting with and getting really good results, is we use what we refer to as a sort of ingestion folder. So essentially, in the same way as traditionally on a research project, you would have folders on a server where you drop everything, right? You drop all the useful secondary, you drop all the useful primary, you drop PDF documents, you drop web pages, you drop company presentations, you drop filings, all into a folder. In fact, you'd probably have subfolders for different things to keep it organized. What we're doing now is we're doing that, but we're doing that with an ingestion tool. So what we're experimenting with Notebook LLM, and um, then we're coming on to question to interrogate that folder specifically, kind of um, highlighted and forefronted in our questioning through an AI model. And I'll show a little bit more about what that means in practice in a an example that I'll show in the next slide. Um, and then in terms of delivery, there are a whole number of tools that you can use to design and present your content better. We use Canva for conceptual um, graphics, and you can use Power BI for data particularly. Uh, So just to give an example of what that meant in a real project, this was pretty text heavy, so I wouldn't bother trying to read it, but I'll just um, talk through it. So we had a client which was a leading tobacco company, FMCG major, that sought to optimize its integrated facility management strategy across 26 manufacturing sites. So it was looking at like how could it already outsourced a lot of facility management, but what was its strategy? Should it have one supplier globally? Should it have multiple local suppliers? Should it have specialist suppliers globally in one element of facilities management? All these kind of things are models that different companies adopt, and it wanted to really speak to um, facilities management suppliers and facility and its peers who were using these services to understand how these trends were changing, what best practice looked like, etc. So it's a pretty typical subject for us. I think we did about 25 interviews across the different domains, spoke to all the biggest facility managers, most of the biggest FMCGs on what they were doing in this area. Um, but how did this change when we were using AI? So we would normally start a project with a period of orientation, so reading of journals, reports, blogs, everything that we could around the market. You know, we have subscriptions to a lot of generalist magazines, to things like Factiva, where we can pick up all the main business um, journals, etc. So we did that again, but this time we were dropping everything that we were finding into the ingest folder instead of just making a note of it within the sourcing folder. Um, it's also very useful for early questions within a project. So when I talked earlier about sort of niche and super niche topics, the truth is that we don't, our head of FMCG who was covering this didn't know everything about facilities management. So there were kind of some real kind of basic, in a sense, basic but kind of structural questions to really understand how this worked. AI is very good at answering those kind of questions. Um, Primary research, how did it help? As I said before, main aid was just with transcription and summation tools. I think we probably used the AI to help us draft the first version of the questionnaire, but I think it probably changed so much with to and fro with the client that was fairly marginal by the time we actually started the project. Um, uh, Participation in forums and events. So pulling all these presentations, transcripts, everything we can into this kind of central repository. All the secondary research that we would normally do goes into the ingest folder, case studies, benchmarking data, industry reports, etc. So and then all the call summaries and transcriptions. So then we had this tool that we could um, query and utilize as we were starting to try and answer our key intelligence questions. And so we would um, utilize that AI tool to query it and get responses specific to pulling, looking that would utilize the data from within the folder first, and then fall back on broader web search, um, validated to that data, so we could find, where it was, and that allowed us to it speeded up the process of pulling stuff together, whether it's as simple as, oh, I remember reading that somewhere, but I can't remember where it was. Simple query in across the ingestion folder finds it in seconds rather than spending minutes searching through. To ideas that it's pulling together across a company filing, some data, and some interview content. So it's a very powerful tool. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't pretend that we're at the end point of expertise in doing that, but it's something that we've started using in our projects, and we think it's got great uh, potential. So we delivered the final product, benchmarking, supplier analysis, cost benefit assessment, efficient strategies that we were suggesting. There was a lot of emphasis on recommendations, etc., in this project, as there generally is with these kind of projects. Um, and how did AI help us deliver it? So we utilized a lot of the information that we queried from the ingest folder. We actually got it to create draft reports and compared them. We didn't actually use one of those draft reports, but we pulled out content from it. Um, we went back to the ingest folder with the initial intelligence questions to get its more developed response. Um, and we queried the ingest where there were questions that we had outstanding. We queried the ingest to see whether it could answer them. There you have to be, I think this is an area where you have to be particularly careful with AI because it tends to try to answer things even when it doesn't know. So you have to be very alert to, and that's where you get a lot of the issues. I've forgotten the technical term for it, sort of data mirages. Um, uh, we so in the end, for most of those, we ended up going back to respondents to try and clarify them. But it's worth trying through these tools. And the output was very successful. You probably expect me to say that, but the client was very happy after we'd worked through it with them with some iterations, and then they subsequently actually recommended us to a number of other companies. Soumya, are there any chat questions that we should respond to, or does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Oliver, we have two questions. Uh, One question is from Yogesh. So he asks, which AI tools have you tried to create and query on ingest folder?
So we've only used this notebook LLM so far, but there are others, and we will be trying them out. I mean, I can give you recommendations, but frankly, if you put into Copilot or whatever, ask for competitors to Notebook LLM, it will give you a series of good ones, or ones that seem to be relevant. And as we haven't tried them out yet, I couldn't really distinguish between them. But Notebook LLM is the one that we've used. and we found it good, but not perfect. So I think we will potentially be trying others, but it may also be that our utilization wasn't quite right. So we're not, so we're going to persist with Notebook LLM until we're confident that we've got our processes are optimized, and then we might look at other companies.
Okay, Oliver, there's one other question from Nisha. She asked, what AI tools would you recommend for both secondary and primary research?
So, um, sorry, I'm having a bad day with my memory. What's the main secondary research AI that we use is it's not ChatGPT, it's not Copilot, it's uh, uh I'll come back on that in a second. It's the other really big one, Perplexity. Yeah, it's Perplexity AI is the primary one that we use for secondary. We think it's in our experience, is the most up to date and best one for standard research queries. And then on primary, I think they're all good for things like transcription and summarization. And then, as I said, for this kind of ingest process, we've tried Notebook LLM, but I couldn't necessarily confirm that that's the best one. Is that it, Farguni?
Yes, Oliver, we can move ahead. We do not have any more questions as of now.
Good. Uh, a quick reminder on uh, some of the ongoing challenges with primary. I've been advocating, expert interviews, participant interviews very strongly in this presentation, but there are challenges. Finding critical respondents is obviously slow, expensive, difficult. You have to be really determined. You have to be skilled at it. We get training from the Institute for Competitive Intelligence, or we have had training from them and from the Institute of Market Research. Um, you need to develop a skill set to do it well. Clearly, it sets back you can't get very quick responses on it. And this may be where some of those synthetic respondent things might come in if people are comfortable with that, it will obviously give much faster results. Um, uh, there are legal issues. I mean, I was quite surprised at a conference in Europe recently that most of the in-house research team said that they didn't do any competitor interviewing and limited customer interviewing. They appreciated that using agencies mitigated some of the legal issues, but um, they, not, that they would still have to think about it and work closely with the provider, they said. But they certainly wouldn't do it in-house because even if you're not looking for confidential information, the fact that you might get it is potentially an issue. But that is a regional thing. I don't think companies in Asia and the rest of the world have those same um, face those same issues. I think, frankly, that smaller and medium-sized companies probably are less sensitive to it, but very large companies with very strong compliance departments are very careful about it. And then obviously you've still got to get people internally to adopt the insights that you've created. Respondent vetting, recording, triangulation, consent, IP protection. So you've got to make sure that if you're quoting people, etc., you've got their consent, compliance. Um, you've got to tell people when you're recording, tell people when you're using AI. Um, yeah, so all these things, the primary is not one to just jump straight into. And, I think there are clear advantages with using outhouse providers if they're if they're really good at it, and if they give you the full insight into what they're into who they're speaking to and what they're discovering, so that you can really get the full nuance out of it, because a lot of the value is in the nuance. So when we present our findings, we present all our findings, but often we find that half the value is in the transcriptions and summaries that we send the clients, where they find other things that really click with them that we wouldn't necessarily have known are important from their perspective. So yeah, I think this has got the wrong title, but it's really the process for an in-house of approaching CI from an in-house perspective. So understanding regulatory constraints. So the first thing is to understand the regulatory constraints and what you can do and can't do. Second thing is to understand what the big questions are that you need to answer, that you want to know as an organization. Third thing is to create a sponsor in the leadership, so it has visibility and it has backing and it has money, because it needs time and money. Conduct your initial research. I would suggest using an agency at that stage, unless you've got experienced people. But even, and for the advantages of that, you're likely to get clearer and less biased responses. Then set up continuous market and competitor monitoring. I think you can use an agency for this, but it can also be done very effectively in-house, using a range of tools, and then try and institutionalize the outputs and and as we were talking about, ensure that they're being absorbed across the organization. Particularly, show not tell is if you can get them integrated into tools like CRMs, etc., so that they're actually there in front of people, in front of the sales team, when they're in their day-to-day processes. And that is all for today. Any more questions?
Yes, Oliver,
Sonia, do you
we
want to
have
update?
one question.
Yeah.
So the question is, what's the preliminary change faced by companies after AI? Has it been the quality of secondary research after AI or ease of information?
I um I think that's a good question. I mean, it's a boring answer, but the answer is both. It's made um uh information. It's certainly made the research processes easier. I think if you in terms of getting better information from it, it gives you the potential. It allows you to search vast content quantities of information at light speed. Um, uh, but um, it needs to be done skillfully and carefully. So I'm not sure whether all the benefits of that are yet showing through for everyone. And I think it needs continuous work and training, to avoid us losing the benefits, because it's offset by kind of laziness, and just and just doing things with poorly crafted prompts, taking the first answer from AI, etc. So I think it gives the potential for better quality, but that requires getting things right. It also automatically and immediately makes things easier. Any more questions, anybody? Sonia, do you want to update on the kind of upcoming schedule?
Yes. Much for your time. everyone, and we're delighted to let you know that this is one of the last webinars for this year. But we're super excited to tell you that there is a lot more coming up in the next year, and the next quarter is filled with many webinars. That is, every second week we'll be holding one for competitive intelligence for a particular role, or the coverage would be slightly more in depth. We have done a lot more research, and we'll be compiling all of the insights that we have learned from and giving you the first hand information that we have received. Along with that, we have a separate vertical of healthcare related webinars, which will be focusing a lot more on cell and gene therapy and life sciences. And we'll stay in touch with you, and happy Thanksgiving and the weekend.
Thanks, Soumya. Thanks, everybody.